In this video, I'll show you how to practice the beginning section of Chopin's Nocturne Opus 9 No. 2 in E-flat major. With my method, you'll learn it better in a shorter amount of time. Hi everyone, welcome to the Piano Keys. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marina and I'm your best piano playing friend. I make courses and tutorials to help you reach your piano goals. In this video, I'm going to show you perhaps a different way of practicing than you are used to. Most people will take a piece of music and repeat it over and over, hoping that that will help them to learn the piece. That is one way of learning, but it's pretty unreliable and it's really the long way around. In this video, I'll show you how to look for patterns and how to organize the information in the piece so that what you're learning happens faster and is more secure than the repeat it and hope for the best way. Now, this is not one of my traditional tutorials where I show you how to play each note and give you the fingerings and the pedalings. This is a very advanced piece. It's really not for beginners. I did make an easier version of this piece, and ever since I made that sheet music and tutorial available, I think it was 2018, it's been downloaded by thousands of people around the world. So I know that it works. I've seen people play my version and it sounds great. If you are more on the beginner side, you want to check out my easy piano version of this piece. I will link that video below this video. Okay, so who is this tutorial for? If you already can play, you've worked on your technique, you're pretty good at reading music, and you've learned pieces that are kind of on the way to this piece. You've maybe learned some Chopin preludes, maybe a Chopin waltz or something like that. This should not be your first Chopin piece. So if you're already in that position and you are trying to figure out how to learn this piece more quickly and better, then this video is for you. In this video, I'll be practicing the A section and telling you how I organize the information in my mind and how I then use that information to learn the piece. As far as fingering and pedaling, I'm not really going to address that here. I have other videos that talk about how to figure out fingering. I have a pedaling tutorial. I also have lots of practice time videos that give you different ways of practicing that is not just repeating over and over. So I will link playlists below. I've also uploaded sheet music of this piece on my website, thepianokeys.com. Go and download it. It's free. It's just the regular sheet music. I haven't arranged that particular one. And the reason you want to do that is because in this tutorial, I will be referring to things that you're going to see on that sheet music. And if you don't have it, it's going to be kind of confusing for you. So thepianokeys.com, go download that sheet music. And then when you have done that, let's go ahead with this tutorial. Let's start with the left hand. So the first measure, I hope that you have the sheet music that you can download from my website because I'm going to be talking about measures and you'll be able to keep track better if you can see what I'm talking about. So the very first measure has 4 groups in the left hand and each group has 3 events, right? 3 notes or 3 sets of notes. The first note of each of those groups is important. I need to know where I'm starting. So I start with an E flat in the first group. In the second group, I go up an octave and play that same E flat. And then I go down for the third group, play the lower E flat, and then I move down to D. So that's good to remember. I've got an E flat, E flat, E flat, D. All right. If I look at the next 2 events in each of the groups, I can see that the first group has this set of notes. The second group doesn't, but the third group has the same exact notes, and the fourth group has the same exact notes. So I know that the first group and the third group are the same. And the only difference between those and the fourth group is just the low note. Okay, so I've already learned basically almost the entire left hand first measure. I just have to figure out what's happening in that second group. So I know I'm starting with an E flat, and I just have to remember or learn these guys. So I'm going to practice playing group 1. I know group 2 starts with an E flat up an octave, and it's got this set of notes. Remember, I'm not teaching you this piece. I'm teaching you how to practice it, okay? Then I know the third group is the same as the first group. And then the fourth group is the same as that, except it's got the D on the bottom. Very easy to learn. So I'm going to play that whole group. I'm going to play that whole measure without talking. Lots of different ways I can practice this. I can practice it with my eyes closed. I can practice it with different rhythms. There's a lot of different practice steps that I show in my other practice time videos, and I talk about in some of my other videos. So I'm going to try to keep this one just related to how to learn this piece, not how to practice in general. Now, looking at the second measure, I can see that what I started with that lower note stepping down is completed on that first group. So I play a C, low C on the bottom. Then these guys are almost the same as what I did in the first measure, but with an E natural instead of an E flat. So in the first measure, it looked like this. In the second measure, it looks like this. You see that? So I'm going to play that first group in the second measure. Now, the next note I have on the bottom is the same C, but up an octave. And it starts the same as the first group, but it moves on like this. So let me show you what's happening. In the first group of the second measure, we had a G and an E, then we had B flat, E, G. In the second group, we're starting with G, E, and instead of doing B flat, E, G, I'm doing C, E, B flat. So I'm just continuing the same chord, but in like a different position. So the way I can think of it is that from here to here, this E is in common between this guy and this guy. And in the second group, that's still the common note. Okay? And then the third group has an F on the bottom, and the fourth group has an F on the bottom. And that's easy to remember. Now the third group has these guys. So I just have to learn those chords or those positions. And then the fourth group goes to, I can name these chords if I want to, or I can just learn where they are on the piano. All right. And again, I'm not teaching you this piece here. I'm teaching you how to wrap your mind around learning it. So one way you can think of this second measure is it starts on the low C, goes up an octave to the higher C, then two Fs. Those are the bottom notes, right? The first notes in every group. So you can learn basically the root movement, the bass note movement. If I take it back from the first measure and just play those bottom notes, it sounds like. So that's a really good thing to practice, to get your ear and your brain knowing where those bottom notes are. So I'm going to practice the first measure and the second measure together, knowing the things that are in common between the groups. So here's my first group. What I have in common with the first group to the second group is the root note, but it's up an octave. Now I know the third group is exactly like the first group. And then the fourth group is exactly like what I just played, but with a D on the bottom. Then I know I'm continuing the downward motion to C. And here we have our, okay, it's a C7 chord. And I'm going to play that C again, up an octave. Still a C7 or C dominant, but just with the notes arranged differently. And I know for my next two groups, my bottom note is going to be F. with different chords on top. Alright, so I would practice that with my eyes closed. I would practice it very, very slowly to make sure that I'm not just going by muscle memory, but I actually know what the chords are. So if I were going to go through and name these chords, it would be an E flat major chord. And if you want to learn about chords, you can take a look at my videos. I'll link them below, teaching you about chords. Then the next chord has an E flat on the bottom, but then it's basically, you could say it's an A flat diminished, A flat diminished with an E flat on the bottom. Then we go back to our E flat major triad. Then it's going to be E flat major over D. So there's a D note in the bass and then E flat major on top. Then I have my C dominant 7. Now this guy, you could say it's a B flat diminished over F. I would think of it that way. So F is the root note or the bass note, and then we've got B flat diminished on top. Lots of ways you can think about this. This is not the only way. And then an F minor. Okay, moving on. Now, looking at the next measure, if I just look at the first notes of each group, got a B flat, a B natural, a C, and then A. So I'm going to listen to that as I play it to get it in my ear. All right, so those are the bottom notes. Now what happens on top? Group 1. Okay, this is basically a B flat dominant 7. So got a B flat 7. Then B, that's a G7 chord. So B flat 7, this way, G7, okay? And then C minor. And then our last chord is an A diminished 7. Am I saying that right? Yeah, A diminished 7th. If these are going by too fast for you, don't think about chords. You don't have to. Many classical pianists don't really think about chords as they're playing. But I think that that's actually not that great because it makes you not as secure in your memorizing. But again, it's not a big deal if you don't. So then I would practice this many times. And when I say many times, I mean many times over the course of days to get it secure. I would use different practice methods. And then I'm going to put it together with the first two measures. So here we go. I'm not really thinking about fingering. It'll work itself out. And now we're getting to the end of the phrase. So let's see what's happening with the bottom notes of each of the four groups. We've got a B flat, which makes sense because if we look at the measure before that, we've been doing B flat, B natural, C, A, and it's just begging to go back to that B flat. So, of course, Chopin gives it to us. And then the second group has the same B flat, but down an octave. And then we resolve that cadence going to the E flat. Okay, 5, 1. And then this next E flat, which is the fourth group, actually starts off the next phrase. So let's see what's happening on top of those root notes. Okay, all right, so we've got the B flat, and then our chords on top, different chords here. But if you notice, the top notes of the last chord of group 1 and the top note of the last chord of group 2 are the same, just A flat. And then group 3 is the same chord we started the piece with. And then group 4 is the same, but with E flat an octave higher than where we started. Now, another thing that I noticed so far is that we start each group with one single note. The middle one is 2 notes, and the third of the group is 3 notes. So that's good to remember, because if you're wondering, do I play it this way or do I play it this way? You just remember that it's 1 note, 2 notes, 3 notes. So I'll play this whole section, and I want you to start looking. Oh, except for there's one spot where, of course, that trend does not continue, and that is in the 4th measure, the second group. It doesn't have 3 chords, so that's the only one that's different. So here we go. I'll play it and I'll talk you through it, starting with the group 1 in measure 1. 1 note, 2 notes, 3 notes. 2 notes, 3 notes. That trend continues. 1 note, 2 note, 3 note. So you want to start really looking at your music and finding things that are common. One note, 2 notes, 3 notes. Here is where that trend is broken. It goes 1 note, 2 note, 2 note. You would have to ask Chopin why he did that, but I'm thinking maybe it was getting a little too, I don't know. I mean, either one can work. So we'd have to ask Frederick. And then we've got go back to 1 note, 2 notes, 3 notes, 1 note, 2 note, 3 notes. Okay, now let's see what's happening in the next 4 measures. Do we have a repetition, or do we have anything that's the same? Well, if we compare group 1 or measure 1 to measure 5, we see that they are exactly the same. So look at your sheet music. Here's measure 1. Sorry, let's do that again. Now I'm going to play measure 5. Same, with a couple of differences, right? The notes are the same, but where we play them are different. So in the first measure, we did E flat down here. In the 5th measure, we're playing E flat up here. Okay? This second group is exactly the same. The third group as well. Instead of playing down an octave, we play it here. And then the 4th group, in the first measure, we played it down an octave. In this measure, we're going to play it here. So it's exactly the same notes, it's the same harmonies, but Chopin is changing where he puts those notes because it gives us a different kind of texture. When you have notes that are lower, there's more resonance. When you have notes that are a little higher, there's less resonance. It has to do with the overtone series, which we're not going to talk about here. So you can remember that in the first iteration of this idea, he's kind of using up more of the keyboard. In the second iteration, he's using up less of the keyboard. That's what I would use to remember what's happening where. I use kind of tricks to remind myself. I would think of it like, oh, at first he's trying to really impress us with these big leaps. And then when he plays that idea again, he's already impressed us and he's going to keep it small. I don't know. So let's take a look at the second measure and compare it to the 6th measure. Are they the same? Well, here's the second measure. And here is the 6th measure. Are you already seeing it? So in the first time he did it, again, he was using more of the keyboard. Now he's using less. He's staying closer to each other, but the notes are the same. This is the same. And this is the same as measure 2. And this is the same as measure 2. All right, so measures 2 and 6 are exactly the same, except that in this measure 2, he played the low C to start off with, and in measure 6, he's playing the higher C. All right, let's compare measure 3 to measure 7. Here is measure 3. Okay, very beautiful. Let's see measure 7. That is exactly the same as what we did in measure 3. No changes at all. This is the same as well. And then this is the same. And this is the same. So measures 3 and 7, exactly the same. No changes whatsoever, not even where the notes are being played. And we've got one more measure to go in this phrase. So let's look at measure 4. And then this, of course, starts the next phrase. So measure, what did I say? 5, 6, 7. Okay, measure 8 starts the same as measure 4. Same here. Same here. Oh, good. And then same here. All right, so you see how many similarities there are? Even if you don't read sheet music very, very well or very fast, you can just kind of look at the map, which is the sheet music, and just compare, like which of the things are similar. Think of it as a puzzle. And you can use like different colored pencils to circle things that are, like use a blue pencil to circle all the things that are the same, a red to circle the other things that are the same as one another, or you can just start kind of categorizing it in your mind. You do not want to look at sheet music or learn a piece as though everything you're playing is a brand new event. It is highly unlikely that everything you play is going to be a brand new event. The human mind and the human ear really likes repetition, so you want to find those places where things are repeated. I'm going to play the entire left hand, and I want you to watch this section a few times through, watching my hand, looking at your sheet music, and just kind of starting to hone in on those things that are the same or very, very similar. Here we go. Oops, there we go. Making mistakes is not a problem. This is the end of the first phrase, starting the second phrase here, measure 5. This is where we stay closer. And then here, we're going to stop there even though it keeps going, because then the new phrase starts. All right, so I spent a lot of time working on my left hand, learning the parts of the left hand, because the left hand provides, most of the time, it provides the harmonic structure of a piece. And if you're going to forget something in performance, it's probably going to be the left hand because in the majority of cases, it doesn't have a melody that you can remember. It's a bunch of chords. But if you think of these first notes of each group as a melody, I'm playing the first note of each group. If I were like a bass player, an upright bass player, I would love playing that. It's very beautiful. Or a cellist. So don't be discriminatory to the left hand because it seems boring or it doesn't have a melody. Everything has a melody if you think about it. So I'm going to play the melody that is in the upper parts of each group. So I'm going to leave out this guy in each group. I'm just going to play the top notes of these chords. So listen. As I go forward, I'm not going to add that pause in between. I'm just going to pretend that there are no notes in between. So now I'm starting measure 5. Okay, so there are harmonies happening. The piano can be thought of as an orchestra. So if you could take out all the different parts of these two phrases and assign them to different notes of the orchestra, what you could do is say, okay, these guys are maybe the bassists and the cellists playing, right? And then here, maybe these would be the violas and maybe the clarinets, or the woodwinds. Or for now, let's just say it's a string orchestra. So these could be the violas and the second violins. Okay, the melody would probably go to the violins, which we're going to do next. All right, is there anybody who loves this piece that can't sing the melody out loud from memory? Probably not. It's so famous and it's so gorgeous. Chopin wrote his melodies in such a way that they could easily be sung, by a vocalist. For now, we're going to pretend it's a violin section, going by what we talked about with the left hand. So the violin section plays. That's the first mini phrase, okay? The second phrase starts the same. And then if we leave out the ornamentation, it just goes like this. That's the second phrase. So notice that the phrases end before the measure is done. Very, very common. If you look at the first note of the piece, it starts at the end of a measure. So that's kind of setting in motion the pattern of where these phrases are going to start. They're going to start at the end of a measure. So let's play, I will play phrases 1 and 2 without the ornaments, without the turn, okay? In your mind, hear a string section playing at the violins. Okay? We're going to add in the turn in a minute, don't worry. Now, the last note in this measure starts the next phrase. So you could say there are 3 very small phrases in this first section, or you could say this whole thing is a phrase. Both would be correct. So I'll play the very first, what I just did, the first 4 measures, and we'll just say that that is one phrase. You see how it feels complete here. But you could easily say there are 3 phrases. Either one would be okay. Now, if you think of it as one phrase, you can shape it in a certain way. We don't want to play music flat, meaning that there are no loud sections or soft sections. It's okay to start that way, but you want to add some feeling to the music. So how can you do that? Well, if you look at the first 2 notes, it's a reach. So what you want to do is not lean into the first note. You want to lean into the second note. It's like the first note is presenting the second note and the second note walks on stage. It's the star. And you hold it. And here, we're just kind of swaying it back and forth. And you back off. right? So the general rule is when you get higher in pitch, you get louder. When you get lower in pitch, you get quieter. And if we think about this mini phrase with that rule, it actually works. So I start here, I get louder here, and just kind of hover, and then I bring it down, right? Because this note is lower. Then we do that thing again where the B flat is presenting that G. But now, instead of going back down, we're going even higher. So you want to go give that guy even more. And then we're coming down. Right? So we don't want to bang out that last note, we want to pull back on it. Pull back here. Now, the next phrase starts differently. Instead of starting low and going high, starting here and going lower, but I wouldn't give it less sound. So in this case, we're breaking the general rule. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. Right? I'm going to play the G and then lead into the F. Why? Because it's on beat 1, and beat 1 is the most important beat of the measure. So in this case, I will ignore the general rule. Here, I'm not going to get too quiet because I see what's coming up, this build up here. Why do I think of this as a build up? Well, so far we've had quarter notes, dotted quarter notes, eighth notes. In this case, we've got 16th notes coming up. So there's more energy happening. I'm going to give it more weight. Now, when I perform it for you, I'm going to perform it different ways, and you'll see that you don't always have to do that. But for now, I'm just going to keep it with that idea. And that's our note. The E flat is where we land. That's what we're going for. You could think of the entire 4 measures leading to that E flat. It's like that was our destination all along. Okay? Now I'm going to put in that turn. So basically that kind of looks like an infinity sign almost. You start on C, and you'll see that there's a flat on top and a natural on the bottom. That means you start on this note, you go up to the next note, and there's a flat written there. So I'm going to go to D flat, come back to our C, then there's a natural written underneath. I'm going to go to B natural and then come back to C. So that C with the turn sign on it is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 notes, okay? So, and all Chopin is doing here is he's adding a little flourish, a little extra, beauty, just because, right? It would be just fine if we left it out. It's just as beautiful, but that's not enough for Chopin. He wants it more beautiful. So we're going to do more beautiful. Okay, so this octave is the biggest leap that we've had so far in the melody. So you want to make sure that when you play it, you really pay attention to that distance and you almost exaggerate it. You could add some time between this guy and this guy to exaggerate that distance. It's like a dancer extending their leg, okay? And so on. All right, moving on. The second phrase starts the same. And it's the same idea, but now Chopin is adding more detail to it, okay? Think of it like a piece of lace. There's more threads here. If I leave out the extras, it's basically just this. It's still the same, but he's adding more detail. Same here. Now, in this guy, where am I? So in measure 2, we did. Okay, in measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, measure 6, we're doing basically the same thing, but with a whole lot of stuff in between. Very typical of Chopin and the Romantic era composers to give you an idea and then develop it like this. I mean, it's typical of most composers, but Chopin is, you know, one of the best at it. Okay? And then here, it's the same as measure 3, but he wants you to also do a little trill. Okay? So, again, following what we've already done, he gives us the same idea, but more intricate. And here, we've already had this idea, but of course, it's Chopin, so he's going to add a little extra, which is this little grace note. So, the first one sounded like this, and this one goes like this. Just for added beauty, okay? Now, I'm going to put the hands together and I'm going to play it a couple of different ways in terms of interpretation. Neither one is right, neither one is wrong. I may do something I didn't like. I might do something I loved. It doesn't matter. We're experimenting, and that's what makes this art. If you play it the same way every single time, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not alive when you do that. You're not experiencing, you're just reiterating, like you're just repeating without living it in that moment. So you want to make the music come alive. So I'm going to try a few different things. Here we go. If you are learning this piece and you want to share what you've done so far with it, I would love to see your performance. Go ahead and join my private Facebook group, Piano Practice Tips with the Piano Keys. You can also find lots of tutorials and courses to help you level up on your piano playing on my website, thepianokeys.com. Make sure to check out my other practice time videos, take lots of notes, and apply them to your piano playing. When the second part of this tutorial series is available, you will see that link right here. Keep practicing, have fun, and I will see you soon. Bye!